reading to do today.
Oh, are these all?
I got 3 of them, yeah.
Okay, somebody must be back.
What's the execs?
Yeah. I guess I've never thought about that.
Good morning. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Thursday, August the 30th. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. All are present. We do have a quorum. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And for those who are present, if you have a noise-making device, would ask that you turn it to silent mode or off so as not to interfere with our electronic communications, as our meetings are all streamed. This morning, we do have several presentations to make. We'll do so at this time. I'm going to ask Mr. DeWeese to join me at the podium. Mr. DeWeese is Director of Johnson County Mental Health Agency. And our first proclamation this morning is in recognition of Recovery Month. And I'm going to ask Tim to make some comments, and I know there are some folks here with him to accept that proclamation, so you can introduce them and invite them to the podium.
Super. Well, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here and recognize September as National Recovery Month. SAMHSA recognizes this month each year for those individuals who have struggled with substance use disorders and mental health, and bringing awareness to the importance of not only providing services for one or the other, but both in an integrated approach. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite Kevin Kufelt, our program manager for our Adolescent Center for Treatment, up, and he has a few folks that he wants to introduce.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Chairman Eilert and members of the board, I thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. As Tim said, my name is Kevin Kufelt, and I am the program manager at the Adolescent Center for Treatment. Today we stand before you as we recognize National Recovery Month at the month of September. 2018's theme is Join the Voices of Recovery, which is invest in health, home, purpose, and community. National Recovery Month was created in part to celebrate and recognize the 20 million Americans who are working and thriving in long-term recovery. In Johnson County alone, it's estimated that 50,000 individuals have a substance use disorder, and unfortunately many of those are affected are youth. Recent data analyzing Kansas youth identified 18,000 youth ages 12 to 17 have reported using illicit drugs during the month prior, and 11,000 youth reported non-medical use of pain relievers in the past year. Only 1 in 20 teens will receive treatment or seek out treatment. Last year, the Adolescent Center for Treatment here in Johnson County served 270 youth, both from Johnson County and from the state of Kansas. Today, I have the honor of introducing to you a strong and courageous voice. This young man is leading his own personal recovery. He is a testament to the importance of prevention services and the importance to be placed on treatment. Again, it is my honor to introduce to you today Landon Hoover.
Hello guys, my name is Landon. Thank you for letting me be here today. I'd like to start off by saying, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. That is what I identify myself with. Started using around 15 years old and realize, or I always thought that, you know, you had to be a certain age in order to be classified as an alcoholic or a drug addict, and didn't realize that the disease of addiction can, you know, it can be anyone. And so, you know, always struggled with that. And, you know, went through 3 inpatient treatment centers, you know, never really hit my rock bottom, kept going, and eventually got a DUI at 16, which led me to be court-ordered to treatment at ACT. That's where I met Kevin. And about 3/4 of the way through ACT, I ended up running from treatment. Just felt like I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to stay sober and get clean, but wasn't really sure. I was afraid. I didn't know what that looked like. I always ran from my emotions and, you know, medicated through things. And so, you know, eventually was allowed back after about 4 weeks to complete my treatment. And, you know, after completing treatment, stayed sober ever since. And it was about, I don't know, 5 months ago. And I would just say that it's very important for inpatient treatment, especially for adolescents, because, you know, I know, like me, I like to minimalize and justify about a lot of things. You know, most people with the disease of addiction are very good at that. And so with inpatient treatment, it allows, you know, a continuous, you know, progression of recovery for that individual. And, you know, it took me, you know, 4 strikes pretty much, or 4 times. And, you know, you can never give up. Most people don't go through treatment just once. Many go multiple times. But it's definitely very important. But yeah, thank you for letting me be up here. Appreciate it.
Landon. Thanks again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Landon, thank you very much. That's a brave young man, and thank you for sharing that with us. And we have other proclamations this morning. The ATC facility and program that Landon mentioned is only one of several programs that our county mental health agency is involved in every day. And so it's an opportunity to publicize the assistance that's available in Johnson County for those who have those kind of special needs. And so again, Landon, thank you very much for being here with us this morning. We do have several proclamations pertaining to National Suicide Month, week and day, which we will present. And again, I'll ask Director Deweese to make some comments, and I know there are folks here to share that information also. Tim?
So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Johnson County back in 2012 took on a pretty large effort of convening groups from across our community to address the issue of suicide. Continues to be a growing epidemic within our community and across the state of Kansas, as well as nationally. The person that really has led the charge for the Mental Health Center in that regard is Megan Clark, and I'd like to invite Megan and a couple of other folks up here. I'll let her introduce them and talk with you all about the importance of suicide prevention and Suicide Prevention Month.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Chairman Eilert, for allowing us to be up here. My name is Megan Clark. I work at Prevention Services, which is a program within the Johnson County Mental Health Center. And as Tim also mentioned, have done some work with the Johnson County Suicide Prevention Coalition. What I want to kind of share about the coalition is that it is truly the work of the community. I've heard Tim say this many times, that it's not just a Johnson County Mental Health Center problem, suicide isn't. It's truly a community problem. And the wonderful thing that we have with the coalition is a variety of people who are passionate about preventing suicide, that work at places such as a hospital or law enforcement, or just an interested citizen of the community that wants to work together. And the great thing about the coalition is we want to break that stigma about suicide. For us to be able to be up here and talk about suicide is a really amazing thing. It's impactful. We know that suicide impacts a lot of people. Many people may be in this room right now. So as a community, we believe that suicide is preventable and that we can and will make a difference. I want to introduce Arthur. Arthur is going to school at Mid-America Nazarene University, and he's going for elementary education. He is very interested in theater and has started dabbling in the fine arts in that way, and so it's kind of a cool thing about Arthur. He also works at the Human Resources Department within Mid-America, and so I want to allow Arthur to come up here and just share a few thoughts. We appreciate you being here, Arthur.
Hello, my name is Arthur, and real quick, I have been in inpatient services for suicide and my bipolar depression about 10 times since I was the age of 11. Honestly, those did help a little bit, but what has helped me the most was the support of my mother never giving up on me. Really, both of my parents have helped, but my mother's dedication towards me and love of me helped greatly. Also, once I found a church that would never give up on me, just helped me tremendously. Once I found those two things, that small knit community that was talked about a few seconds ago, that just helped me realize that there were people that cared about me in this world and that I was loved and that I belonged here. And once I realized that, I didn't want to kill myself anymore. I still struggle with bad thoughts and sometimes thoughts of suicide, but when I do have those thoughts, I just talk to people at my church, or I talk to my mother, and I realize that I'm not alone in this world. Thank you.
Do I present all these proclamations to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Tim, staff, and those who receive program services from the Mental Health Agency, thank you very much for the good work that you do. I'll express a personal opinion. You know, we've had changes at the state level, not in a positive way, over the last several years when it comes to providing state assistance and state programs for those who are impacted by mental health issues. But I want to note to this community, the Board of County Commissioners and our community at large has continued to support and increase funding for our mental health agency and the very, very important programs that they provide. So I want to say thank you to the community, thank you to the volunteers, thank you to the staff and the Board of County Commissioners for providing a level of service that is meaningful to those in our community who need that assistance. So thank you all very much. At this time, we will turn to the public comment portion of our agenda. If there's anyone present who would like to address the commission on an item which does not later appear on the agenda, would invite you to the podium, state your name and address, limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we'll be glad to receive that information.
Good rainy morning, commissioners. My name is Connie Scheidler. I am actually Mr. Osterhaus's constituent, and a few of you are familiar with me. I have been approached with some questions about the election system that we have in the community, and I'm not quite sure where to direct the questions, and so I thought what I would do is run through them, and then maybe Mr. Jarrett or one of you could contact me and let me know where I might find the information that I need to advise some groups of your electorate, your citizens. First of all, I don't understand your request for proposal system that was entered into for the current $10 million voting system from ES&S. If I understand correctly, it was a 2015 or 2013 RFP process for competitive bids, and it's my understanding that the system purchased was not proposed. The one that ultimately was purchased was not developed or certified as of the time of the prior RFP, and so I don't understand how the system that we bought in Johnson County was actually part of any competitive bid, or if it was supposed to be, if that was the idea. The other questions that I have, from the recent news articles, I understand that this $10 million system is going to have some changes made to attempt to prevent the primary fiasco that we had recently from happening again. And I'm wondering if these changes or repairs are going to need to be certified before this coming election by the federal EAC or Election Assistance Commission or the state. And if we have to do that with regard to these changes so that we can have security on our election systems, which I think all of you would agree with me is a huge deal, that they get certified in time for the November elections. It seems to me like it's a pretty close call on that. So do the changes have to be certified by the federal government and the state of Kansas, and do we have time, is my question. I'm also wondering if the county anticipates terminating the existing ES&S contract and refreshing the October 2015 RFP process so that Johnson County can evaluate other voting systems that currently are certified if we don't have time to get the one that you have certified. I think that there were a number of other vendors that participated in the 2015 RFP, and so I know that other counties that surround us use different systems, and I didn't know whether we were going to have to buy another system and get that one certified, or if we already have the legacy system in place that is certified, because I think that we have one in Johnson County that was used before. Finally, it's my understanding, and again, I'm no expert in RFPs in the county processes, but it's my understanding that one of the vendors that was rated in the top 2 during the October 2015 RFP process and has installed over 175 systems throughout different counties here in our area of the world, in this geographical base, and in the state of Kansas and Missouri and Iowa. I'm wondering if that group, who also, if I understand, sold Johnson County the legacy system for the November successful election before the main election, the general election, if that is going to have a situation where the board or the county would respond to that vendor's request or offer to go back and look at the legacy system and get it up to speed. Because, I'm sure you all are very aware that the election clock is ticking and the integrity of our elections is huge. Obviously, you're all elected officials, you know how that is. And I think that the citizens of the county really need to be able to feel comfortable in the system that we have going forward. And so those are my questions. I would like to know where exactly to direct those questions and how I could get some answers from those. I know that probably you weren't prepared to come in here today and give me answers from the dais, and that's completely understandable, but I know that I also can't address you all as a group under the public meetings rule without violating that, and we wouldn't want to do that. So those are my questions, and I would appreciate it if we could end up with some answers in some form or another.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you very much. Yes, you can call my office anytime. I'll be glad to sit down and visit with you about the questions that you've raised. The one question, this system was certified by the federal government agency as well as the state of Kansas. It will need to be recertified with the changes that have been recommended. And yes, the anticipation is that that will occur before the November election. But the other questions you raised, I'd be glad to visit with you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission? All right, if there's no one else to be heard, the public comment portion of our agenda is concluded. And we'll move to the consent. There are no notes for the record this morning, so we'll move to the consent agenda. Will the clerk please read the proposed consent agenda items?
Item number 1, consider approving the August 9th, 2018 business session minutes. Item number 2, consider approving and authorizing an increase of $118,000 to the Public Works Vehicle Storage Canopy Project account, bringing the total project authorization to $311,000, and to authorize the reallocation and use of Public Works Fund reserves in an amount not to exceed $118,000. And item number 3, invitation for bid, IFB number 2018-050. Consider authorizing a contract with Lloyd Builders to engineer and construct an open-air metal vehicle canopy at the Public Works facility for a total amount not to exceed $274,234.
Okay. Are there any questions by commissioners on any of the proposed consent agenda items? Is there anyone present who would like to have an item considered separately? There's no one to be heard. It's back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
Move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Consent agenda approved. Moving to the action agenda, item number 4.
Resolution number 060-18, application number SW-CU-3402, GA. Consider a request from Crown Castle, applicant, tower owner, and APAC, Kansas, landowner, for conditional use permit renewal for a communication tower at 16325 Gardner Road on property zoned RUR Rural District.
Mr. Leipzig.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig, Planning Development Codes Director. This item is actually out of Commissioner Brown's district. It was presented before the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board on July 25th, 2018. Unanimously approved by that board. Staff is also recommending approval for this communications tower off of Gardner Road. This is actually the third time this item has been before you, originally in 2003. So that being said, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you might have. It's 150 feet tall.
Questions of the staff? Thank you. Is the applicant present? If so, are there any comments would like to make? All right, so noted, no comments. Anyone else who would like to speak to the commission on this item? If not, it's back before the commission. Mr. Brown, do you have a motion?
I have just one quick question, Chairman, then I'm ready to make a motion. Jay, did we have, at the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board, was there objection from the public at the board?
No, there was not.
Thank you. Okay, Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion, if you're prepared.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 060-18, approving a conditional use permit renewal for a communication tower located at 16325 Gardner Road for the reasons and subject to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the application as recommended. Any further questions or discussion? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 5, resolution number 061-18, application SW-CU-3410, MC. Consider a request from Robert and Sharon Finley, applicant landowners for conditional use permit renewal for parking 2 large trucks at 38455 West 151st Street on property zoned RUR Rural District.
Jay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Leipzig. This item off 151st Street is from the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board. That body met on July 25th, 2018. It was unanimously approved. Staff is also recommending approval of this item for this renewal. The only change, when this is actually the 3rd time this item has been before you. Previously it was for 3 large trucks, and now it is for 2. And that is the only change.
Okay. And the period of time is for how long?
10 years.
10 years. Okay. And the reason for that is because it's in a zoning category that would not otherwise allow.
Yes, that is correct, sir. The conditional uses are ways to regulate and to go through the approval process for some of these things that are not approved by the letter. They're as stipulated in the regulations.
Okay. And both the zoning board as well as the staff recommend approval?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Other questions? Is there anyone present, or excuse me, is the applicant present? Any comments you'd like to make? So noted, no comments from the applicant. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission? If not, it's back before us. Mr. Brown, do you have another motion?
I do. I move to adopt resolution number 061-18, approving a conditional use permit renewal for parking 2 large trucks located at 38455 West 151st Street for the reasons and subject to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the resolution and the application as recommended. Any further questions or discussion? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 6, resolution number 070-18, application number SW-ADUP-3411, GA. Consider a request from Ryan and Stephanie Roby, applicant landowners for an accessory dwelling unit permit located at 24997 West 210th Street on 1.3 acres on property zoned RUR Rural District.
Jay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Jay Leipzig, Planning Director. This item off of 210th Street is for the approving an accessory dwelling unit. The structure itself is already there. The applicant is finishing out the upper portion of the accessory structure. It's for 912 square feet, so it's just slightly over our administrative approval, and I can give you an idea what it looks like on the plat there. That is Aaron, that's the wrong item, I believe. Excuse me one second. That's the sorry. That's actually the next item under agenda review. There you go, that's it. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. That is what the structure will look like when it's finished out. But like I said, it's already there. This is just for finishing out the upper, the living unit for the accessory dwelling unit itself.
Questions? All right. Is the applicant present? Any comments you'd like to make? All right, so noted. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on this item? There being none, it's back for the commission. A motion is in order. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. I move to adopt resolution number 070-18, approving an accessory dwelling unit permit located at 24997 West 210th Street for the reasons and subject to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the resolution and the application as recommended. Any further questions? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Are there any other items?
No, sir.
All right, moving to reports and communications, Ms. Postoke Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, we have one item on the manager's memo this morning. On September 4th, the City of Olathe will hold a public hearing to consider the issuance of industrial revenue bonds in approximate principal amount of $23,850,000 and consider exemption from ad valorem taxation regarding 36,000 square feet for commercial office expansion and 250,000 square feet for warehouse expansion generally located at 164th and Lone Elm Road. The information is in your packet, and with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you all very much. Next item, Mr. Kleffner, audit report.
Chairman, Audit Commissioners, good morning. Ken Kleffner from Audit Services. This morning, I'd like to brief you on the results of an audit that we recently conducted of Johnson County MedAct. The audit was a carryover from our 2017 audit plan. We initiated the audit late summer, early fall last year, and completed our field work in May of this year. We reviewed many, many long-standing practices, procedures, and activities. Before I get into the results this morning, I have just a couple of slides to sort of set the stage, if you will. This first slide is an indication of growth over time in the response to incidents. The top line represents all incidents that MedAct may be dispatched to, and the bottom line, or the lower line, indicates Code 1 incidents, and those are the incidents that have the highest priority. That include cardiac arrest, chest pain, stroke, and other similar grave matters. You can see very clearly that the top line is growing at a faster rate than the lower line. The point or the takeaway, though, is, however, that the response to incidents is growing over time. I also want to share with you this particular slide. MedAct has a goal to respond to 90% of incidents within 10 minutes. And again, this is a measure over time from 2009 through 2017. It's shown in minutes, and you can see clearly in that first lighter shaded blue column that MedAct has met that goal of responding to all incidents within 90% of response. And I should note that these two charts, the source for that data was dispatch data. So as I mentioned, this is a transition audit. And with most transition audits, we assess management practices in a number of areas. In this particular audit, we looked at fee setting, we looked at billing, fleet management, consumable medical supply inventories, controlled substances, equipment inventories, and performance measures. And before I get into the first topic, I'd like to show this particular table. This particular table illustrates the mix of funding, if you will, required, both tax support and fee revenue to support MedAct operations. And if you look at the bars, if you will, the lighter blue shaded is the tax support, and the darker blue bar represents fee revenue. So you can see clearly in 2008, 64%, of the resources required came from the tax support and 36 from revenue. And if you extend out to 2017, you can see that the tax support required to support MEDAC has dropped, and the revenue-generating activities have produced more revenue. So that's really the takeaway, that revenue is trending up and tax support is trending down. This next slide represents a comparison. MARC, Mid-America Regional Council, did a survey of 19 area regional service providers, and the survey was of comparing the ALS-1 emergency transport rate. In our case, for Johnson County MEDAC, that's the most commonly billed rate. And the bar that goes out to the right that says 723, that is the median. In other words, that half of the rates of those surveyed are above that, and the other half are below that. Johnson County's rate, however, is 38% below the median. So they're in that bottom, probably tercile. Okay, let's talk about some of the results. In the area of fee setting, our concern in fee setting is that MEDAC lacks a formal fee setting policy describing how often their fee structure should be reviewed or the criteria to consider when reviewing fees. We offered 2 recommendations. First, develop a fee setting policy and adopt a level or range of cost recovery for services provided. And I'm going to pause for just a moment on that particular recommendation. That's really a philosophical decision that I believe that Chief Davis and leadership need to have. What is that range of cost, if you will, that should be recovered when establishing their fees? And the second recommendation is to review the current rate structure to determine if they are set appropriately. The next area, billing for standby medical services. MEDAC provides standby medical services for some community events at no cost. Now, I need to be totally transparent with you. In the grand scheme of things, this is a small revenue-generating activity for MEDAC. It's really not a huge part of their revenue. We do have a concern, though, that, which leads into the recommendation, that they don't have any procedures to ensure consistency describing the criteria to consider when waiving fees for standby events. Some standby events they provided that service at no cost. Other very similar standby events, they charged a fee. We're just looking at this from a risk of public perception and equity. That's why we offered the recommendation. Moving on to fleet management, I'd like to kind of put this in some context first. MEDAC has a fleet of vehicles, approximately 50 vehicles, 25 of which are ambulances, and the other 25 are support admin type vehicles. We believe that there's opportunities to achieve greater efficiencies and increase utilization of resources by transferring fleet management responsibilities from MEDAC to the Fleet Services Division. And we offered a number of recommendations in this particular area. First, develop a plan to transfer fleet management responsibilities from MEDAC to Fleet. Second, assess mission requirements and prepare a business case analysis regarding take-home vehicle assignments. I'll pause here for just a moment. There are 3 vehicles in MEDAC that are assigned to individuals on a 24/7 basis, which really leads to the third recommendation, to revise their internal vehicles policy and procedures, which ensures compliance with county policy regarding those take-home vehicles. Our concern there is that there are very unique and specific IRS consequences related to take-home vehicle assignments, and we want to make sure that those requirements by the IRS are met. We did offer a couple recommendations to the Fleet Management Division. First, assume responsibility for managing all MEDAC fleet of vehicles. And secondly, administer the current MEDAC vehicle maintenance and repair contract with the local vendor. To try to put that last recommendation in context, MEDAC currently contracts with the local Ford vendor to provide all the repair and maintenance to all 50 vehicles in their fleet. Last year, payments to that particular vendor were approximately $635,000. When you look at how those repairs and maintenance is being performed, we just think there's possibility of efficiencies in that contract as well. Moving on to consumable medical inventories. Some inventory and supply controls are weak or inefficient. We offered 4 recommendations there. First, that they develop a reliable inventory tracking system. Second, discontinued tracking office supply expense type items. And what I'm referring to there are consumables, consumable type of materials and supplies that are just consumed in the normal day-to-day operations. Third, implement a more efficient method of billing medical supplies to first responder agencies. What that addresses is that MedAct supplies and stocks regularly many first responder fire departments, for example. Well, they bill those fire departments for the supplies that they stock them with. That's to provide that first step in the continuum of care, if you will. We think that even if they were to aggregate those billings, that efficiencies could be achieved on both the billing side, Paul's side, as well as on the receiving end. And then lastly, implement a more efficient supply distribution system. And in the interest of transparency, Paul was looking at that when we entered into the audit, so there's no issues there. Moving into controlled substances, this is really a positive comment. The system of controls designed to safeguard controlled substances reduces the chances of loss or theft and increases the chances that should a loss or theft occur, it would be quickly detected. Now, I need to qualify that. We looked at the design of controls, the architect, if you will. We did very little testing in that, so our conclusion is based on the design. But we did have 3 recommendations that we believe would strengthen the controls. First, develop a report to monitor how crews administer controlled substances. Second, require 2 employees to pick up controlled substances from the pharmacy. And then lastly, revise policy and procedures to define responsibilities for reporting loss or theft of controlled substances to the DEA. I'll mention here, and I'll mention again a little bit later, Paul took exception to that second recommendation, which was to require 2 employees to pick up the substances. He performed his own analysis, if you will. He looked at the controls existing at the point of purchase, the controls during the transport, and then on the stocking side, and he believes that they're adequate, so I accepted his non-concurrence. Moving on to equipment inventory. Inventory records lack sufficient information to track and monitor equipment items. Now, I want to mention this is the second public safety organization that we've been in recently that essentially did not have what I consider to be adequate asset protection, inventory control, management policies and procedures. We offered 2 recommendations. Adopt an asset management practice to ensure proper stewardship of IT resources, and develop inventory management policy and procedures. Now, having said what I said just a moment ago, I have talked with the director of gyms, and he believes as this consolidation is underway that this problem will be, well, it's being addressed currently, but will be corrected at the beginning of next year. So I have some comfort with that. Last topic, performance measures. MedAct collects a considerable amount of data. However, public reporting and sharing that data is significantly limited. We offered 1 recommendation, which is to adopt industry performance metrics that align with their mission and publicly report that. What we're encouraging them to do, motivating them to do, is develop a performance measures management and public outreach program. Now, I do have 3 audit observations. If you recall, I mentioned one of the areas that we wanted to look at was at their billing system. MedAct employs third-party vendor to perform billing and collection activities. I believe they're the only agency within Johnson County government that has a third party doing that. They have designed a system of internal controls to help ensure proper billing and compliance with applicable laws. And again, that conclusion was based on our review and assessment of their design of controls. We did very little testing in that area. We did note, however, that there are slight differences between MedAct's billing and procedures when we compared that to the county's AR policy. So we're suggesting that Chief Davis and his staff get with TFM just to make sure that his procedures are appropriate. The quality assurance program, the internal quality assurance program, MedAct's risk assessment identifies their internal QA/QI program as one of their controls to ensure best possible medical outcome. We noted, however, when we looked at this process that the level of reviews, the amount of reviews, they vary. As those incidents and responses to incidents increase, there's less time available for those QA reviews to be performed. We're suggesting a more formal QA/QI program and that it could provide greater assurance to achieving their objective. The EMS Medical Director Program. The Medical Director Program is funded through annual contributions by participating fire districts and fire departments and hospitals. However, we noted that the contributions from those participants do not fully fund the program and require continued county support. In the interest of transparency, we just wanted to alert the board that there's nothing in the establishment of that program that requires that program be self-sustaining. So it will continue to require, it's not self-sustaining today, so it's going to require continued support from the county. In conclusion, the audit offered 18 recommendations, and as I noted, Chief Davis concurred with all but one, and the one that he non-concurred with is noted, and I accept that. And Fleet Management concurred with the recommendations regarding the assuming management control of their fleet. So before I take any questions or stand for questions, I want to thank Chief Davis. We met on at least 6 to 8 occasions. He and his staff are wonderful to work with. He offered the audit team to participate in ride-alongs, and I can't tell you how that helps us get a better understanding of the mission. I appreciate that. And then I also want to offer a personal comment to the men and women of MEDAC. It takes a special individual to work in that field, and I appreciate the fact that they assumed or chose that as their profession. And last but not least, I need to thank the audit team. Lynn Smith, Michael Oglinski, and Harry Heflin for a great job, for a great audit. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Allen.
Actually have several questions, and maybe Chief Davis, if you can come to the podium, I'd appreciate it. The first one I was going to direct is the medical director, and appreciate the understanding that we do subsidize that. But I recall one of the main benefits to MEDAC was that the medical director could do in-house certification and training on site, and the employees would not have to leave and attend the certification off-site, and then just the overall training of procedures and the best practices and everything else. So MEDAC itself does receive benefits from having a medical director.
Paul Davis from MEDACT, and that is correct. We do receive benefits from the medical director's office. The collaboration that exists is stellar and beyond anything I've experienced. However, it is collaboration, so there's work to be done on our side, work to be done on their side, and also from the participating agencies. With the staff at the medical director's office, it's impossible to expect them to be able to take on everything that they need to do for the county, so we're going to work with them to make it successful.
Thank you. In regards to the billing, in the past, one of the constraints I know that we tried to stay within guidelines on is we didn't want to bill more than what Medicare was approving. We, for whatever reason, didn't want to go above that amount. We tried to stay within the Medicare amount. Do you currently know, or maybe get back with us on what the allowable Medicare billing rate is? Are we under that?
We're just a shade over the Medicare allowable rate, and yeah, there's not a particular national or local standard even for ambulance billing, but what is typical or customary is about 2.5 times the Medicare allowable rate, and we're far below that. So really, there's room for us to improve on that end, but also we have to take into account what's best for the community, and that's why we agree that this has to be policy-oriented, but also collaboration with the board.
Well, again, Ken, I do appreciate it. It appears we do need to look at those rates and, maybe to set a goal, and hopefully 50% recovery. But if there's a substantial increase, one of the things I would like to do if there's additional revenue produced is to look at these quick response units. If we grow 6,000 or 7,000 people a year, we have an aging population in the county. From my perspective, I'd like to stay ahead of that curve, and if there's additional revenue that could support additional units or whatever, would do that. I actually read this audit very thoroughly. My last one is in regards to the recommendations on maintenance and the 25 service vehicles that to be serviced in-house, but I would want to have a discussion on having the ambulance serviced by the fleet management. It's my understanding anyone that works on those ambulances need to be certified. And those are critical pieces of equipment. And to have, a consistent repair where certain people work on those all the time, know the rules, the regulations or whatever, cost is important, make sure that's bid appropriately. But there may be, in my mind, a reason for that particular piece of vehicle, at least have a discussion about, do we want a certain vendor, and I don't care who the vendor is, as long as they're certified and do a good job. But that piece of equipment, I probably would want to have more of a discussion on than maybe taking ambulances and service those in-house. I think there's other reasons to consider on that, for that.
May I respond real quickly? The auditor is not suggesting in any fashion or way that we change that current business model of the ambulances. They're, just to have the opportunity to drive up to a bay, get serviced, and leave, that helps Paul and MEDAC achieve that best medical outcome. I believe that. However, those other 25 vehicles, I think there's opportunities where maybe Chris and his staff can provide some efficiencies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think Mr. Allen is correct. The critical vehicles need to have that specialized certified service rather than, let's say, non-critical vehicles. Jason.
Well, Jim got most of my questions, but I do have a couple. And one's more of a comment on page 6, back on the fee stuff. I think it's important to note that, MEDAC shows up regardless of someone's ability to pay. And, sometimes we're just not going to collect. And so I appreciate those numbers. It's good to see, but it also reflects, I think, the ability of someone to pay, and we don't ask for a credit card when we show up at your door. So important to note. I want to go back, page 20, back on the medical director. We talked about we're not quite there on self-sufficiency. What number is that before we reach that number of fully funding? Do we have that number?
I did not come prepared to answer that one. May I get back with you?
Yeah, that's fine. Sure.
Yeah. What that delta is, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's a very small portion of the deal, but I was just curious what that number was.
Be happy to. I'll respond to everyone.
Thank you.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several questions. An incidental question. Chief, I was wanting to ask you your perspective on recommendation 5.2, the one where you did not concur. Do you have anything that you would like to elaborate on in terms of your concerns or non-concerns, depending on how you want to look at it?
Sure. First, I appreciate that I won't divulge the location of the pharmacy. But there are specific controls in place there, security controls, and the packaging is nondescript, plain packaging, and they're not large quantities, and there's not a routine, so you couldn't set your clock by the time. And then once again, when it arrives at the destination, there's at least 3 or 4 other people there, and it's during daylight hours in our MEDAC facility. So I don't perceive that there is a danger there, and I just don't perceive a danger.
Fair enough, thank you. Another incidental question, and it's a follow-on to Commissioner Osterhaus's question. When someone requests service, many times, if not always, local fire departments respond to identify, stabilize the situation. Are the, I'll call them residents, the recipients of the service, are they able to then decline service from MEDAC if they so choose, particularly in terms of then transporting someone to the hospital or the ER? Could they then say, well, we can take Joe there ourselves, we don't need EMS, and trying to avoid or reduce their personal cost? Is that possible?
It is possible, and with respect to the consent laws, we require express consent if someone is conscious, alert, and oriented. Otherwise, if they're not able to make their own decisions, it's an implied consent.
Okay, fair point. Thank you. I had that question recently, and since I had you, I thought I'd ask. Very good. Mr. Chairman, questions to the auditor now, if I could. Mr. Kleffner, as always, I appreciate the level of analysis you do, and you kind of hint at this, but what I didn't see, and I was wondering if there was a reason why we weren't able to cover 3 points. And the first is did your analysis include the relationships between the fire service, the fire departments and the services they provide, as well as EMS, and how well that's coordinated and what we can or should do differently? And as an outgrowth to that, what I didn't see clearly was our service delivery levels here. Are we meeting our needs and expectations? You referred to measures, but then you did not take it to the step of these measures met or didn't meet. We're doing it well, we're not doing it well. I just didn't see that, because as a transition audit for us and management to hold the new chief responsible and to help him plan, to give some sense of, well, you're doing well, keep doing the same things, or there need to be system or programmatic changes. And then the next step, final step, is kind of the efficiency of service. You did mention the QA and QI comparisons, and that's fair, but are we doing everything we can do or should do, not just in terms of collections, which you do make reference to, but also in terms of cost? And how well are we doing? I'm not asking for a judgment on the spot, but I just wonder, when you do these types of audits, do you include that kind of performance outcome expectation and report on that?
In a very general sense, if the data / information is available, we try to measure that, yes. I lost track of all of your questions. I do know.
Well, I'm just rambling, but trying to get a perspective in terms of what you cover, the detail versus the outcomes of the program.
Well, again, if the information is available, we do try to measure how well the outcome is being achieved. And that's really the precipice or the background behind the very last on the performance measures. We're encouraging MEDAC to adopt industry performance metrics that align with their mission, publicly report those, and more importantly, to develop a performance measures management public outreach program. So I think that indirectly gets to your...
But within the scope of your audit, you did not do that. That's what I was just curious about. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
I have. Yes, Mr. Brown. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, just a couple of comments. Mr. Kleffner, I want to tell you I appreciate the depth that your office goes into, and I know the job of being the auditor for the county is a tough job, tough to stand up there. But the depth and the work and the integrity that you put into your job and the people in your office is greatly appreciated. Provides me as a commissioner with a great deal of comfort. To Chief Davis, I want to say that MEDAC is a source of pride for me as a commissioner, and I'm thrilled with the job that you're doing and the production, what MEDAC does for our community and how it is perceived is top shelf, and very proud of it. So that was my comment. Thank you.
I think I speak for Chief Davis. It's not us, it's our staff.
Okay. Let me, Chief or Ken, I know in the past, and it's been mentioned here earlier, that someone calls, you all go. And we don't ask for a credit card or a check or anything like that. And can you give us an update on the level of uncompensated services that are provided?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I didn't bring that information with me, but I can provide.
Well, the last time I think I checked, it was somewhere around $2 million a year.
That was right, and I'm not sure if that's changed significantly since then.
And I think it's worthwhile mentioning that, MedAct is only one department. Our mental health services also have a significant amount of uncompensated services provided each year. And so, you know, we were talking about the fees earlier, and I think there really is a balance between, you know, what's charged and the service that must be provided in a general sense across the county by taxpayers. You know, there's a balance there, and so I think we need to continue to recognize that. Yeah. Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, I'd like to make one comment. If we can go back to slide number 3, looking at the numbers of responses that MedAct makes, and I appreciate Mr. Kleffner's comment that if you look at Code 1, the most serious medical emergencies, you'll see the growth there. But then when you look at all incidents, you see the growth there is far outpacing those highest priority medical calls. I think when we look at our data, we know that we have inappropriate use of the system, and that's not unique to Johnson County. It's an issue across the country. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that staff continues to focus on that to try to attempt to move those inappropriate calls, quite frankly, oftentimes a real social service need, not a medical need, out of the medical emergency response system and back to our Health and Human Services departments that can more cost-effectively address those concerns, but more appropriately address them too. So thanks to Paul and a number of directors, Ellen Warnicki and others, and continuing to look at that and try to attempt to provide a better level of service, to get a more cost-effective rate.
Yes, good comments. All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Now, we have another report. Ms. Heifel?
Good morning, Julie Highfield, Treasury and Financial Management. And I'd like to thank the commissioners for the opportunity to present the 2017 Trend Monitoring Report. We've been preparing this report for over 20 years, and it began as an information tool for bond rating agencies, and it really provides you all with some good information, ability to make decisions, because we go at a completely different angle. Instead of bringing you a CAFR that is just a snapshot of 1 year, we look at 5 or 10 years in a row and see what the changes have been. So that's what I have for you today, and I'm not going to hit every page, but I'll give you a few highlights of some of the sections. Just as a reminder, the parks are not included in this information, and it is unaudited. Mostly it comes from the stat section of the CAFR. That's how we build it. And you'll see quite a few times adjustments for inflation. The AAA bond rating is on everybody's mind, and this provides some valuable information to the agencies. So in the sections that are in this book, the reason that they're important is that instead of just giving you the numbers that you find in the CAFR, the raw numbers, we'll take the revenues, for example, or the expenditures and say, okay, these are the actual numbers, but how do they make up the whole, and what is maybe their share of the whole, and how has that changed over a time period? Or take into the factor of population and how, so here are our revenues or our expenditures, but what does that break down to per person? So those are some of the ways that these sections are valuable to you. For the revenues today, there's several charts in there about revenues. We've got actuals, we've got comparisons to budget, we have some per capita also, but today I want to just look at the total revenues and make you aware, as you are, that there are there are 9 broad categories listed. But the bulk of it is 85% is 3 categories, and those are your property taxes, sales taxes, and charges for services. Charges for services is largely JCW operating that utility, so that's just the broad information of those categories. Looking at total revenues for the 5-year period that we're talking about, we see an 11.1% increase over those 5 years. And just for your information, in looking at all of this, I looked back at the 2013 trend monitoring report, which was a very different picture than you see in 2017. Most of these categories are on the uprise in the 5-year period in 17, but if you look in 13, we had just the opposite with a downward trend. And so it's kind of important to bring that into your focus, that although these increases over this period are what they are, 11%, and affected mostly by property tax and sales tax, but last year was the first year that we had recovered completely to 2009. So just to keep that in mind, that we had the 5-year downward trend here, and then this 5-year trend that you see is pretty much leveling things off. Two other categories that are substantial in the broad ones are the grant revenue and the other category. So just a little side note, other is mostly made up of bond proceeds. So it's really separate from operating the government, because those are our projects. But it's a fairly small component this year, but next year you're going to see a big change in that with the courthouse bonds and the Tomahawk bonds. So you'll see a huge jump in that category next year. You have to watch for it. One other change that you'll see on the charges for services line is that, you know, most of these revenues were on the upward trend, and that was the one in 17 that went down significantly, 25 million, and that was just an internal change in cost allocation. So we took a look at that. 85% in those top 3 categories. For the expenditures, there are several charts in there also, and the one that I want to look at today is a comparison between 2013 and 2017. So we break these out into their strategic programs, and then break out what the share of for each category, what its share of the whole is. So that way you can kind of compare and see how spending is changing over time periods. And for this 5-year period, the big change was 2 categories went up in the 5 years, and those were public safety and public works. Might not surprise you. And so for those shares to go up, the shares that were lowered were the general government and health and human services. And another area of expenditures that we'll talk about, mental health, kind of greased the runway for this one. We had Landon and Arthur talking very eloquently about the services that they've received from our county. This chart that we provide for you is to keep monitoring how those shares of sharing that expense between us and the state is going. So for the county share, we had quite an increase in the 5-year period, from 129 million back in 13 to 148 million. Over the 5-year period, the county share is increasing almost 15% compared to the less than 1% that the state support has increased. So we just continue to monitor that so that you have the ability to address it when you're conducting business in Topeka. One other note, 2017 was a year that motor vehicle was able to be self-sufficient after implementing in 15 a walk-in fee to encourage people to use the mail instead of walking in. That fee has helped them achieve self-sufficiency on the expenditure side. Operating position, again, bond rating, very important. We have a reserve policy that we like to see reserves remain between 20 and 25%, and this is diligently achieved through conservative budgeting and through operating practices. There's a chart that shows the components, the 5 different areas of our fund balance, and some of them are highly restricted. You can't use them without storming Washington, basically, or The unassigned fund balance is the purple on the chart that you see, and it allows us to respond to emergencies and things that are unforeseen. So we like to keep that balance flexible for use. And over the 5 years, that general fund balance has increased 16.6%. There's the purple that I talked about on that chart. Debt. So all governments are to be responsible with their issuance of debt and consider the burden on the taxpayer. And the chart that I picked out for you is the direct and overlapping debt, which when we prepare the CAFR, we have to consider the entire burden on a taxpayer. And so we are able to pull that information together on somebody's tax bill. What all are they experiencing from all their jurisdictions, and those are made up of school districts, municipalities, Johnson County Community College, the parks, and the counties, and then some others. So you're probably aware that because of the way we structure our debt, we don't issue a lot of general obligation debt. When we issue wastewater debt, we pay for that with user fees, and when we build buildings, we pay for that by leasing them back to the county that's using those buildings. So our general obligation debt is low, and just looking at what the taxpayer is experiencing, over the 5 years, school districts have increased their share, and it's been taken away from municipalities. So that's just a note of interest for you on debt. The last thing I want to mention is the recovering economy, and one of the charts that we have in there is about new market construction, and this year was another big increase. We had seen one in 14 after the downturn. 13 was where it reached an all-time or recent low, and that was a big increase in 14. And then this year, now we've seen the second largest increase overall in new market construction value, 31.64 just in that year. Overall average growth rate is 6.78%. And that is my overview of this report for you. Oh, yes, 117.55 over the 5 years. Pretty good numbers. We have a senior accountant that's responsible for preparing this report, Kurt Yates, and he also does the stat section, so that works nicely together because there's a lot of analysis that needs to be done on those stats. And so a thank you to Kurt for digging in and finding the reasons for these fluctuations.
Ms. Highfield, I want to go back to a comment you made earlier, comparing 2009 revenues, I think it was to 2015 or 16.
16 on ad valorem. We reached the 9 levels again after 7 years.
So that was ad valorem, not the total?
No, just ad valorem,
So,
which is our biggest source.
Right, I understand. So it was in 2015 when we had recovered to the 09 level, is that right?
16.
16?
Yeah, it was 7 years.
Okay, all right. And obviously the reason for that is during the recession, valuations went down.
Right.
Significantly.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Jim?
I just have one question with the increase in the tax base countywide, I tell people a mill generally would support $10 million. With those increases or whatever, can we maybe get an up-to-date figure, maybe as of to date with the new assessed valuations? And I just want to know what that figure is, frankly, for the 20 mills that the state collects, the additional revenue that we're collecting possibly. So
can I get that for you?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't expect you to have that. So
I think it's 11 million, or maybe slightly over 11 million a year per mill, something like that. Yeah.
I'll verify that for you.
Thank you.
But just trying to get all these different taxing sources, just the increases that we're sending to the state on various levies. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the revenue side, I thought it was encouraging, the SERI report in regards to sales tax. And further checking, the actual sales tax increase is running somewhere around 4.7%.
Not the 9.2.
No, that was a different calculation, I'll put it that way. But, previously we'd been looking at 2.5%, 3.5% or maybe even 4%. So it is running a little higher than what we've seen in recent years. So, Julie, thank you very much. Good job. Are there any other items under reports and communications? All right, there being none, we'll turn to commission comments. Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. It's been a busy week again. It's a pleasure to be able to visit with our citizens and our communities about the good things that are happening around us. Saturday morning, the chair and I had the pleasure to be invited to participate in the Mission annual Sunflower Parade. The most important thing about that morning was the Grand Marshal was Alexander Goodwin. You probably saw and heard a lot of information about him coming from England. He had some cancer issues, and he was supported by the Mission Police Department and the Chief Ben Handley, and he was there as the Grand Marshal. He has to come back about every 4 months to have his leg adjusted as he grows. It's the darndest thing I've ever heard, and he's actually has a book that I was able to purchase about his efforts to stay alive, so we're glad he's a part of our community, even though he lives in England. Saturday afternoon, I want to thank John Anderson, a citizen in Prairie Village, for offering this suggestion to our police chief, Tim Schwarzkopf. They held an open house that was very successful, attended by a number of our citizens, and I think they're going to continue to do it on a yearly basis. Tuesday afternoon, we had Mid-America Regional Council Board of Directors. The chair and I were there. The most important event of that day was welcoming back Mary Laird, who was David's chief executive secretary and assistant. And she's been absent for about the last year and a half, taking care of her cancer issues. So we welcome her back, and she indicated to us that she had one of her checks that morning supported the fact that she has very much improved. So we're glad to have her back. And this morning, I was invited to attend the Merriam groundbreaking for their new community center, even though it was inside. I want to congratulate Mayor System and our city administrator, Chris Engel, for all the work, and the council members and the citizens for moving forward that project. It's underway now. So thank you, citizens, for all the good thing you do for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Klicka.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just get everyone prepared. September, we're going to be opening up 2 new parks. Big Bull Creek is scheduled for their ribbon cutting or opening on September 22nd. Right now, it's the plans, so hopefully the weather and everything will map out. And then it's looking like about September 29th, we'll be doing the formal opening of the Stillwell Park up in far southeast part of my district. So we're looking forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ashcraft.
I had 2 items, Mr. Chairman. First, since we had a comment this morning about the election issues, and I appreciated your response, Mr. Chairman, I am wondering if maybe at some point we might get a report from Mr. Waters and/or Mr. Metzger concerning our preparation. I know a lot is in play, and it's requiring a lot of effort, but some questions have come up to me regarding the stress testing that we went through and that we will be going through, and kind of the scenario planning, because we all, I think, can say without a doubt, are sensitive and want to make sure it works. And if there are any needs for any third-party reviews, I believe now our IT department is more intimately involved in the process, but to kind of give us assurances and also to reinforce what we can do. I know our role is somewhat limited, Mr. Chairman, but we want to be supportive in whatever fashion we can be. So I just wanted to offer that as an observation. And then, Mr. Chairman, changing gears slightly, many times when we have the, what do we call it, the proclamations, the opening ceremonies, sometimes I do do wonder about those, you know, like World Planning Days. You know, I yawn a little bit, but I will tell you today, and that was a powerful presentation, and I appreciated your comments concerning the topic.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allen.
Yes, very telling comments this morning, and probably one of the most impactful that nearly the 10 years I've been here is to hear those personal stories and actually to be able to get up and tell what's going on in your life. It just shows all the good work that does go on in Johnson County Mental Health. Real quickly, had 2 different meetings, an all-day planning meeting yesterday with the Kansas City Transit Authority. They're getting close to making an announcement. They will be the first transit agency in the United States that may be, it looks like, partnering with Uber for an Uber-type service. And my understanding is the county that they will open that in possibly will be in Johnson County. So I know there's a lot of concern here that we adjust to what's going on in the marketplace, but that is getting close. Myself and Commissioner Brown will be absent next Thursday. We'll both be in Salina on this transportation task force. We had a pre-meeting this week, Monday, with other representatives from Johnson County, and looking forward to doing a presentation. The initial programs that they're showing to do the next 3 years, if funding is approved, other than the I-35 and 75th Street project, I did not see anything on the list. And I personally would like to plant a seed that as transportation does this upheaval, the next 10 years, transportation will be dramatically different in the United States. I think we need to plant a seed in the metropolitan area, you know, Johnson, Wyandotte County, Douglas County, possibly Miami County. There should be some consideration for public-private partnership in regards to transportation in the metropolitan area. Frankly, I don't know what that's going to look like, but you know, different types of driverless trucks, shuttles, autonomous vehicles. I think actually the Kansas City Transit Authority is going to have an autonomous vehicle they're going to be able to show us here in Johnson County. But I don't think you can build your roadways out in the future, that we need to look at alternatives possibly in that funding to at least plant that seed. I think maybe a little ahead of ourselves. I don't know what it's going to be, but we have a lot of construction needs, but we also need to, especially in a metropolitan area, that between Johnson, Wyandotte, Douglas, and Miami County 30 years from now may have 1.5 million people that can't build your way out of it. So just maybe possibly plant that seed.
Yeah. You've raised the question. Mr. Ashcraft.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Allen, that's pretty exciting about the Uber partnership. I hope that does work for Johnson County. The question, though, is one thing you didn't mention, and I hope it's part of the conversation, is the use of AI, artificial intelligence, and how that can impact.
I think that's all on the table.
Okay, good.
I think
good.
it all is.
Well,
and that's why it's, you know, I mean, to go to this meeting, and we're still a little ahead of ourselves, but it is either, possibly, Mike, is either going to be a 5 or 10 year plan for transportation in Kansas. And I just think we need to you know, the world is changing, transportation is changing, and how that's going to impact us locally. We at least need to have a conversation. I don't know where it's actually going to go.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Osterhaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few things going on in the 4th. Wednesday, we had the Blue Valley Education Foundation annual breakfast. It was really great, and their focus this year was mental health, so it was nice to see our proclamations this morning. They had a little panel that spoke on mental health and what the Blue Valley School District specifically is doing, but I know all 6 superintendents from our Johnson County school districts have joined together to study that issue and work on that issue and really taking a proactive approach. And I know they partner a lot with Tim and his crew, so we appreciate that. I'll echo the comments that were made about the Citizens Academy. I could not stay because I had the JCDS meeting, but it was good to see so many people again. I know we have another full class. Thank you to Johnny McFarland, our intern, for putting that together. Workforce partnership on Tuesday, more good things going on there, even though our unemployment numbers are low. We're still continuing to work for the betterment of those looking for jobs. And let's see, I believe that is all I had. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I have several items. On Saturday, with Commissioner Ashcraft, we attended the Olathe Library groundbreaking. at the old Hy-Vee location at 135th and Brome. So Olathe Library System is growing, and it's going to be pretty magnificent. It's going to be a beautiful building. So excited about that. Saturday also happened to be Johnson County, Kansas's birthday. Turned 163 years old. The railroad crossing at Santa Fe and the Burlington Northern line, right down here below us, is underway. The road is closed, and transitioning across that is going to get a lot smoother, according to BNSF. Yeah, we'll see. Your Corvette might bottom out going through there, Commissioner. Driver's license office, sore subject, but I got my phone blew up on Monday morning as a contractor. That's not the morning that I want my phone to go crazy dealing with something that has nothing to do with me. But I received multiple phone calls, emails, Facebook private messages, texts about folks standing in line at the driver's license office at 7 a.m., got there at 6:30. The sign on the door says we open at 7 on Monday. Online, the app, everywhere you went through Department of Revenue said, we're open on Monday, we open at 7. Nope. The Monday before was the last Monday for the summer, and they didn't mention that, and I had people, they were hot. And I think, quite candidly, they deserve to be. They deserve to be upset and mad, and I was too. I had several conversations ranging from the governor to the Secretary Department of Revenue, and I made it clear that you know, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but that's dotting an I that there's somebody that got paid to do that, and they didn't, and that is unacceptable that our citizens have to stand in line. I also was glad that I found that out, considering I was going that afternoon to renew my driver's license, so I saved myself a trip at somebody else's misery, though. Elections topic. The election commissioner, the election office, and ES&S, our supplier, have, from my perspective only, have my 100% full, couldn't be more bold support. However, if we hiccup again in November at this election, that confidence will drop precipitously, and I don't think that's going to come as a shock to anybody, but I wanted to make that clear. And then, to end on a positive note, we had 20 or 21 brand new Johnson County Sheriff deputies graduate from the Sheriff's Office Basic Academy last Thursday night, I believe it was. At any rate, we have 20 brand new, freshly minted deputies in Johnson County, Kansas, and I'm not only proud, but I'm excited for them and their career and for our safety collective as a community. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. To your question, Mr. Ashcraft, yes, I think it would be appropriate to have Mr. Waters and Mr. Metzger report to us in a couple of weeks. And as has been mentioned, our own DTI folks have been working with the vendor, and so that information is available. If you'd like to contact Mr. Waters and get that update from our own technical staff, that would be great. I want to say a special happy birthday to a 103-year-old member of our community. Her name is Nadine Sheldon, and a long time resident of Johnson County. She had a birthday a couple of weeks ago and is still functioning on her own, and assistance from her family, but she's committed to living in her own home. So happy birthday, Nadine. To Mr. Allen's comments and Mr. Schaefer, we had a general report at the Mark about a committee that's working on the issue of driverless vehicles and how that might impact our metropolitan area and how local governments might respond to that kind of technology. And finally, I want to say a big thank you to Judge McCarthy, Judge Ryan, and Senator Moran. We had a Veterans Treatment Court graduation yesterday. 4 veterans were recognized for completing the program. I think that brings to 21 the number of veterans who have successfully completed the program, which is sponsored by our district court. There are a number of individuals who make that possible, including the sheriff's office, the district attorney's office, the parole office, representatives from the VA, and very, very important mentors who are volunteers who work with each one of our veterans who go through that program, and in most cases are military veterans themselves. But it is a terrific program, and thank you to all of those who have made that program possible and continue to provide its success. With that, we do have a request for an executive session. So, Mr. Allen.
Are we ready to move into that then?
Not yet. We have, we're at 10:59, 11 a.m. Let's try about 20 minutes for our agenda review, or let's say
10:50, 11:15?
11:20 or 11:25, see if we can make that deadline.
I would move that the board recess its open meeting and convene in executive session at approximately 11:20 a.m. for a period of 10 minutes for the purpose of discussing matters related to security and to preserve the security of county operations, and for a period of 5 minutes for the purpose of receiving the advice of counsel and to preserve attorney-client privilege, and to reconvene in open session in this room at approximately 11:35 a.m. or as soon thereafter as the executive session may end.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the request for the executive session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. We are in recess. We'll take a short break and come back for agenda review. You never know.
$1,000 or so.
There's a call Dad wants. Good thing Grandma's there.
So, interesting.
Call and ask me. That would have been simple.
She didn't want to take your one phone call.
She didn't want to interrupt you.
That's right.
At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for the purpose of agenda review for next week's business session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka is in the building. Commissioner Osterhaus is in the building. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. We do have a quorum present. Would the clerk please read the proposed consent agenda items?
Item number 1, consider ratifying the chairman's reappointment of Stephanie Clayton to the Commission on Aging through August 31st, 2021. Item number 2, consider ratifying the chairman's reappointment of Donald E. Sullivan to the Investment Review Group through June 22nd, 2020. Item number 3, consider reappointing Eugene Liscombe as the 2nd District Representative to the Commission on Aging through August 31st, 2021. Item number 4, consider reappointing Lori Plank Allen as the 3rd District Representative to the Museum Advisory Council through May 7th, 2021. And item number 5, consider reappointing Brad Weisenberger as the 6th District Representative to the Airport Commission through July 31st, 2021.
Any questions on any of those items? Consent agenda, all of those will remain on consent agenda. Moving to the action agenda.
Item number 6, consider approving the August 16th, 2018 business session minutes.
Mr. Click and Mr. Brown were absent, so that will remain on action. Next item.
Item number 7, resolution number 068-18. Consider a request from Phelps Engineering Incorporated, applicant, and Dugan Properties LLC, landowner, for PRB 3, Planned Urban Neighborhood Retail Business District zoning and preliminary and final development plan for construction of an office building at 6675 West 199th Street.
Mr. Leipzig.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jay Leipzig. You saw this item earlier this morning. I apologize again for that. This application is for an office building. It's out of the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board in the Stillwell area. It was unanimously approved by that board. Staff is also recommending approval. They're asking approval for the final development plan and phase 1. That's phase 1 of the preliminary and the final development plan and the rezoning request. I can give you an idea of what this is the site plan for the proposed office structure, and then an elevation of what it will look like. It kind of has a rural character, similar to kind of a barn appearance. That's for Mr. Dugan's insurance office.
Jay, I understand there was some concerns raised at the zoning board. Can you enlighten us? How were those addressed?
Sure. There were several folks that spoke with concerns at the zoning board meeting that had concerns about the intensity of uses with showing both phase 1 and phase 2, and the zoning is certainly appropriate. It's consistent with the area. There's residential zoning around it, and then that was the zoning board's recommendation is to only approve phase 1 at this time for the overall development plan, and staff is also recommending that as well. This way, it will allow it to develop over time, but there was just some concerns with having that area be too intense for the the neighborhood area around it, but it is consistent with the zoning district.
Okay, so this is a zoning as well as preliminary and final plan approval. But the zoning request was there a plan that this complies with?
Yes,
Previously
it did. Yes,
adopted?
it is. Yes, and that is, yeah, the current zoning is PRB2. This is the request to PRB3.
Okay, all right. Other questions? All right, well, this is a land use item, so it will stay on action. Next item?
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes,
a
excuse
follow-up.
me.
Do we anticipate anyone speaking extensively on this item next week?
Commissioner, I'm not aware of anyone that has notified staff in addition that is very concerned about it. I believe that all the concerns are addressed at the zoning board. We certainly will visit with the applicant, though, between now and next week, just to see if they've heard
I did
other
get a
comments.
call, couple of calls relative to this item, and not necessarily opposed to it, but we may have one or two people who may at least, if not want to speak, may be in the audience.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next item.
Item number 8, consider authorizing a contract with WestNet Incorporated to replace the county's existing fire and EMS station alerting system in an amount of $1,086,415.82, HGAC contract number C07-16.
Ellen.
Good morning, Ellen Warnicki, Emergency Management and Communications. This request is to authorize the contract with WestNet. I would mention that this was included as a capital improvement, a CIP that was approved through the 2018 budget. The request was for just over $1.2 million. This contract is for just over $1 million. This will replace the fire station alerting system that we put in 2004. It is quite outdated, pretty archaic, I would say. It offers one method of alerting the stations, which is an audible only. It gives no visual alerting in the station. So that's one of the huge benefits of transitioning to a new system. Additionally, we've not gotten good customer service from the vendor. It requires staff to go out and troubleshoot and fix the issues in the station. With this contract with WestNet, the maintenance is included in the contract. So WestNet would contract with a local vendor to provide the maintenance. Therefore, we won't be using staff time to do that. So this amount includes the first year maintenance, and post that first year, maintenance will be $110,000. So with that, I would be open for questions.
Okay, questions? Mr. Ishcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Warnicki, a couple of questions, and Mr. Chairman, Ms. Warnicki and I visited a little bit yesterday, but would like to ask, just for disclosure, the anticipated life cycle of this new system is about how many years do you think?
20.
About 20 years. So have we done any life cycle costing for this system, or have we been focusing on a year-by-year cost estimate?
Yeah, we have not done any life cycle at all.
Okay. So, and then the final question is, who will own the source code for this system? Would the county have access to that, or will that remain exclusively the vendors?
I'm not entirely sure. Are you asking if the vendor would go out of business or something like that if we would maintain
as
that?
a system ages, sometimes the vendor will not want to do upgrades. They'd rather move on to a new system, and sometimes the owners of those systems, if they have access to the source code, can make modifications that fit their needs. And I was just wondering if we will have that, or if it's totally at the discretion of the vendor.
No, I would say that this would be at the discretion of the vendor, that we would not.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Consent or action?
Let's keep it on action.
All right, remain on action. Next item.
Item number 9, consider approving
All in favor?
approving the delegates for the Kansas Association of Counties Business Meeting on October 16th, 2018. Voting delegate, Chairman Eilert. First alternate, John Bartolak, County Clerk, and the second alternate, Penny Postick Ferguson, County Manager.
Should note, this can go on the consent, that's fine. But commissioners, please note your attendance at the conference as soon as possible. It will be held here in Johnson County again this year. So if you're planning to attend, please let Renee or Ms. Pearson know. So those formalities can be completed. And if there are other county staff who will be attending, why, those should be sent to the KAC convention person ASAP. So thank you. Okay, this item will be on consent. Are there any other items?
No, sir.
All right, that concludes our agenda review. We are in recess from our regular business cessation, and our executive session will begin at 10:20? 11.
We said
Excuse me, 11.
Right now, or 11:20.
11:20, okay? So noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
At approximately 11:35, we reconvened in open session. No action is required, so we are adjourned. Everybody have a nice holiday weekend.
Thank you.